Okay, well, it's time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines here in the French papers. Alison Sargent is with us in studio. Morning, Alison. Papers really taking stock of this state of emergency, which is no longer in place here in France.
That's right, Eve. As of midnight this past night, so France is now waking up today, no longer in a state of emergency for the first time, as you said, in almost 2 years. It was put in place following the November 13th terrorist attacks and renewed 6 times. Le Monde has devoted a special issue taking a look at what the state of emergency actually accomplished in the past few years. They say it did help to reassure the population, but it also ate away at personal freedoms and didn't do all that much actually to help fight terrorism. It also inspired the new anti-terror law that goes into effect today, kind of taking the place of that state of emergency and making many of those measures permanent. You can read about it in West France. They say that the measures are not going away. They include the power, in West France they kind of outline 4 measures from that state of emergency that aren't going to be going away. They include the power of police to raid, detain, and question terrorism suspects. So the state of emergency is over on paper, but is going to really live on in this new anti-terror law.
Indeed, and permanently. That's a law put in place forever. A lot of critics actually questioning if that is necessary or not. But there is another measure set to continue in that carrying out searches really along our borders.
That's right. Now, normally under the Schengen laws, border controls are not necessary, but France actually started carrying out border controls back in November of 2015, not because of the terrorist attacks. Strangely, it was actually because of the COP21 climate conference, but then the attacks allowed them to keep those measures in place and continue carrying out searches. Le Monde reports, though, that rights associations are really not happy about this. They say France is in violation of European Schengen laws, and this violation is actually set to continue. As of now, they've prolonged these measures through April of next year.
Indeed, because you're allowed to suspend them for a certain period of time, but it has now been ongoing. However, I have to say they're quite sporadic. Sometimes you get checks, sometimes you don't. But let's move on to some other political news, Alison. The right-wing Les Républicains party has voted to kick out several members that defected to President Emmanuel Macron's En Marche movement.
That's right. Now, these members call themselves les constructifs, the constructives, because they say they're cooperative and willing to work with the ruling République En Marche party. 2 are MPs who joined the president's group in parliament. 3 are ministers in the government, including the prime minister, Edouard Philippe. You can see their photos there in Aujourd'hui en France, Le Parisien today. Now, they say that they're constructive, but Les Républicains, they call them traitors to the party, and they've been trying for months, actually, to decide how they're going to punish them since they defected. And they actually decided finally last night that they're going to kick them out of the party. Now, right-wing paper Le Figaro calls the decision-making process a psychodrama because they really deliberated for a very long time, didn't know how to handle it. 4 of the politicians are being formally excommunicated from the party, but the situation of Edouard Philippe is a little trickier since he is the prime minister. He's been disowned, but very much less formally by Les Républicains.
Which some analysis is saying leaves him really in a political no man's land.
Yeah, it does, because the president's party, La République En Marche, which he's sort of defected to, I guess you could say, by joining the government, is holding a big meeting later this month, and Edouard Philippe is not invited. Why is that? Well, because he actually hasn't formally joined the party, even though he is in the government. So I guess the prime minister is important enough that he doesn't need a political party.
Okay, well, we'll see, indeed. Meanwhile, on to something perhaps a bit lighter. I'm hoping, in any case, that we'll see. No, I can see your face. Because today is, of course, All Saints' Day, something that's celebrated around the world.
That's right. If it's sort of light and dark at the same time, I suppose, because it is a time where people
I'm
go
thinking
to the
of Halloween and dressing up.
I know, right? It's a little less fun, All Saints, the day after Halloween. But it's a time kind of light and dark at the same time because many families go to the cemeteries and think about their loved ones who have passed away. That's what they do here in France. And it turns out French people actually think about death a lot, not just today. Catholic paper La Croix has published a poll that finds that 2/3 of French people say they think often about their own death or about the death of a loved one. And over 2/3 say they also feel comfortable talking about it. So they're not just thinking about it, they're talking about it. And the paper quotes a sociologist who says that he thinks that this shows that the death isn't as much of a taboo subject as we think it is, at least in French society.
Well, yeah, and as somebody from Ireland originally, I think it's really quite nice to talk about people who we've lost along the way, and so I don't see that as necessarily a depressing topic. But it is a big holiday as well, All Saints' Days, and not just here in metropolitan France, but in the French overseas territories.
That's right. In overseas, Eve, it is much more festive, so it is that lighter thing that you wanted to talk about. You can see a photo of preparations underway in Guadeloupe. This is from the paper France Antilles. They're cleaning digging up the graves of their loved ones and getting ready to light candles and place flowers and have a party there. So in Guadeloupe and Martinique, as I said, the holiday is much more festive than in France. It's much more like Mexico's Dia de los Muertos.
And I have to say, Mexico, it is pretty impressive.
Yeah,
Even they have lots of
it.
candy, like in the shape of skulls and gravestones. It's really quite an impressive party, actually, and celebration of people in Mexico. Finally, a definite light story to end with. Celebrating a baby panda here in France.
That's right. His name is Minnie Yuanzi, M-Y-Z for short, as he's known here in France. He was the first baby panda to be born on French soil. You can see him here in Le Parisien with his mom. He's almost 4 years old now. Le Parisien
When was
reports,
this photo taken?
Right, this was taken, I don't know, but I think it's recent.
When he was, okay.
Or, well, he's got a lot of...
Yeah, I'm going to look into this later.
We can look into it later. Don't know exactly when it was taken, but now he
small.
is. Now he is 4. No, but he's clean there. He's got a lot of.
That's
fur.
true.
But they report that there have been droves of people coming to see him over the school holiday that's been the past 2 weeks in France. He's at a zoo outside of Paris, and one of his biggest fans actually is the First Lady, Brigitte Macron. She hasn't seen him yet, though. She's going to visit the zoo with Chinese authorities in December.
Okay, thanks so much for that review of the French papers. Alison Sargent will be back with us a little later on in the morning with the International Press Review.